called me ambitious, dangerous. Some even whispered that I wanted to be a god. But none of them truly understood what drove me. Not greed, not vanity, but the unshakable conviction that Rome was destined for greatness, and that I was the one chosen to lead it there. This is not a tale written by historians or sung by poets. This is my story, told not from marble statues or dusty scrolls, but from the heartbeat of the man behind the legend. The man who built an empire with vision, loyalty, and speed, and who, in doing so, challenged the very gods of fate. From the mud of Gaul to the golden halls of the Senate, every victory came with a price. I learned to command men through trust, to control Rome through division, and to shape destiny itself through words. But power never comes without consequence. The same fire that forges a conqueror can consume his soul. So listen closely, because what you're about to hear is not just the rise of Julius Caesar. It is the confession of the man who became unstoppable, and who discovered too late that even legends must one day fall. Before we dive into the strategies that turned Caesar into an unstoppable force, let me ask you a quick favor, but one that makes all the difference. Make sure you're already subscribed to the channel. That way, you won't miss the upcoming episodes of this epic series, where we'll uncover, step by step, the tactics, ambitions, and secrets that shaped the greatest empire in history. There's a lot of powerful content coming: battles, betrayals, conquests, and lessons that still echo today. So hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and get ready to step into the ruthless world of Rome. I remember the exact moment I realized that it wasn't enough to win battles. I had to turn every victory into a political step upward. Rome was an arena where power wasn't taken by the sword alone, but by minds willing to cross boundaries others feared. My ambition was born on the muddy roads of Gaul, but grew silently within the Senate walls. While others saw politics as a field of honor, I saw it as a chessboard. Every word, every decree, every alliance, all of it was a calculated move. I learned to use military prestige as the fuel for my ascent. Each triumph on the battlefield was carefully communicated to the people, each speech crafted to ignite admiration and loyalty. The Republic was blind to the power rising within it, the power of a man who blended charisma, strategy, and audacity. I didn't just conquer lands, I conquered hearts. That was the difference. My soldiers followed me not out of duty, but faith. The people didn't praise me out of obligation, but hope. Even the Senate, in its fear, couldn't resist the strength of my name. Rome adored heroes, but I discovered something more powerful than love: the people's need to believe in someone who made them forget the mediocrity of others. I became that someone. My strategy didn't begin as a military plan. It was a silent pact between ambition and destiny. I would become unstoppable, not because I was stronger than others, but because no man dared to dream as high as I did. Loyalty cannot be imposed through fear. It is born when men believe your victory is also theirs. I learned that through endless marches in the freezing lands of Gaul, when my legions followed me without knowing if they'd ever return. While other generals remained in Rome, enjoying feasts and Senate gold, I shared hard bread and sleepless nights with my soldiers. I slept in their tents, marched in the same mud, bled beside them. I wasn't just their commander, I was one of them. And there I discovered the true secret of power. To lead, you must be seen as one of your men. Many thought I conquered through the sword. They were wrong. I conquered through trust. I knew every centurion's name, remembered faces, stories, families. I knew who had lost a brother in battle, who carried scars of service to the Republic. When I spoke, it wasn't a distant general giving orders. It was a companion asking for courage. They followed me because they knew I would never abandon them. That was my true strategy, building an army that fought not out of duty, but devotion. One night, the Germanic wind cut through our faces like blades. We were surrounded, exhausted, food running out. Some officers suggested retreat. I refused. I mounted my horse and rode to the front lines. The men saw me there, facing the darkness, and understood. If I did not retreat, no one would. That night changed everything. We marched until dawn and won. From that moment, My army no longer saw a general, they saw a symbol. When we returned to Rome, covered in dirt and glory, the people called them heroes. But they said something that still echoes: we did it for Caesar. That invisible bond made me unstoppable. Their loyalty was my strongest armor, and I knew that while their hearts beat for me, no enemy, foreign or domestic, could destroy me. But that devotion had a price. The Senate began to fear me. They said my soldiers loved me more than they loved the Republic. Perhaps they were right. Deep down, they knew. A man who commands the hearts of legions no longer needs permission to rule Rome. That was when I understood the next part of my strategy. Divide and conquer, not only on the battlefield, but within Rome itself. Rome was a minefield of egos and masks. No sword was sharper than a senator's tongue, and no poison deadlier than a broken promise. I learned early that fighting battles outside Rome was easy. Surviving the wars inside the Senate was the real challenge. There, every glance was a trap, every handshake a deception. But I never feared the game. I mastered it. My strategy was simple yet lethal: divide to conquer. I knew Rome's balance between ambition and fear was fragile. I used that fear as a weapon. I turned allies against each other, fed rivalries, made every man believe he was essential to me. None of them were. They were all pieces, and I was the only one who saw the whole board. Crassus had wealth, Pompey had prestige, and I had something neither understood: the people. While they hid behind fortunes and faded glory, I walked among the crowds. I let them touch me, shout my name, see me as one of them. Rome was starving for someone human, and I gave them that: a general who smiled, who cried with them, yet thought like a god. When I formed the first triumvirate, it wasn't out of friendship, but strategy. Crassus would be my shield of gold, Pompey my balance in the Senate, and I, the one who held it all together in the shadows. They thought we shared power. I was already preparing to make them collide. Rome could not have three suns. Only one could light the empire. Eventually, the inevitable happened. Pompey drowned in his own intrigues. Crassus perished in his ambition in the desert. Rome, exhausted, turned to me for salvation. I didn't seize power. Power came to me. That was my greatest victory, using Rome's own system against itself. While the senators plotted, I sliced their alliances and planted doubt in their hearts. The Senate feared chaos, and I became the only man who could contain it. But my tactics weren't confined to politics. In battle, I did the same, spreading false messages, feigning weakness, retreating only to strike harder. Confusion was my ally. My enemies thought they were fighting a man, but they were fighting an idea. And you cannot kill an idea already rooted in the hearts of men. Still, I knew power alone wasn't enough. I needed to shape perception. To conquer Rome, I had to conquer its mind. And for that, I created my deadliest weapon: the art of propaganda. Communication is a weapon sharper than any gladius when wielded with precision. After conquering hearts and lands, I realized I had to shape how Rome perceived me. That's when I turned to what you would now call propaganda, an invisible machine that rewrites history before it even happens. It wasn't about lying. It was about framing reality. Every action I took was orchestrated not just for victory, but for interpretation. When I marched through Gaul, my triumph wasn't just military. It was symbolic. I made sure news of victories reached the markets, taverns, and plazas before the Senate. Carefully crafted reports, heroic stories, monuments, all told the same tale. Caesar was Rome's destiny. I had coins minted with my face beside symbols of peace, order, and rebirth. Each coin was a message, traveling through hands, spreading faith in my leadership. Words like victory, peace, and return became mantras whispered across the Republic. I also understood the power of stories. Poets, playwrights, and historians became my silent allies. I funded them, gave them audiences, and let them shape my image into myth. The people didn't just see me as a man, they saw me as Rome itself. Sometimes silence was my loudest message. I let rumors breathe, let admiration grow naturally. Rome believes in what feels spontaneous. I simply made spontaneity look inevitable. I also used fear. I reminded the people of dangers, barbarian invasions, corrupt governors, economic chaos, and presented myself as the steady hand capable of restoring order. They didn't need me to claim indispensability. They felt it. Every appearance was a performance. The cut of my toga, the gleam of my horses, the weight of my words. I wanted the people to think, he is one of us, and yet greater than us. Propaganda didn't turn me into a god. It made me a reference point. And when a symbol dominates the public mind, opposition collapses under its own weight. Yet as I rose higher, that same image began to cast shadows around me. My legend inspired awe and fear. And in Rome, fear is the beginning of conspiracy. The next battles would no longer be fought on distant fields, but within marble walls and whispered oaths. Speed has always been my most loyal ally. Roman generals clung to rules and traditions that made them predictable. I saw war as a river. To win, one must flow with it, not fight against it. In Gaul, I learned that victory didn't belong to the largest army, but to the one that arrived first, before the enemy even realized the war had begun. My legions became an extension of that belief. They marched light, moved fast, struck precisely. We carried less, rested little, attacked when the enemy least expected it. Every maneuver was rhythm, not repetition. Attack, retreat, strike, vanish. I never hesitated. Decisions were made in minutes, not days. Hesitation kills empires, and Rome was drowning in bureaucracy. My audacity shocked them, but it worked. What others achieved in months, I conquered in weeks. When I crossed the Rhine, no Roman had dared before. The Germans thought the river sacred, impassable. In 10 days, I ordered a massive bridge built. It wasn't just an engineering feat, it was psychological warfare. Crossing that river broke their spirit before their lines. They saw that Rome's reach, my reach, was limitless. The same philosophy guided me when I crossed the Rubicon. Ordered to dissolve my army, I instead whispered, Alia iacta est, the die is cast, and marched toward Rome. While my enemies debated legality, I seized destiny. They expected a politician. They met a thunderbolt. Speed wasn't just physical. It was communication, perception, momentum. I made sure my victories traveled faster than my enemies' rumors. While they composed speeches, the people were already celebrating me. In Alesia, when Vercingetorix united Gaul against me, he believed I was far away. By the time he realized, he was surrounded. My engineers built double walls, one to keep him in, another to keep his allies out. 2 rings of death, raised in record time. Weeks later, Gaul fell. Speed became my philosophy. Act before fear has time to grow, speak before doubt forms, strike before they can think. And it made me unstoppable. But it also made me solitary. The faster I advanced, the further everyone else fell behind, friends, allies, the Senate itself. In my march toward eternity, I had outrun even my own humanity. Absolute power is like fire. It warms, lights, and dominates, but eventually consumes the one who wields it. For years, I believed my strength came from never stopping. But the greatest enemy of an unstoppable man is the silence that follows his last victory. When I returned to Rome, the people hailed me as a god. Flowers rained from rooftops, crowds chanted my name, and even those who once despised me bowed in forced admiration. I had reached the summit and found it unbearably lonely. The cheers that once filled me now echoed like warnings. Because the man everyone fears soon has no one left to trust. My legions were scattered, my enemies dead or exiled. My allies, now ghosts of ambition. The Senate bowed, but in silence plotted. Rome could not bear a man greater than its institutions. I hadn't just conquered territories. I had conquered the very idea of power. And for that, they would never forgive me. The signs were clear. Long stares. Whispers that stopped when I entered. Brutus, whom I loved like a son, spoke with unnerving calm. Cassius hid resentment behind reverence. The Senate's silence thickened. In Rome, silence always precedes blood. Perhaps it was my fault. I had turned speed into habit, conquest into need. I didn't know how to stop. I accepted too many honors, too many titles. The savior had become the tyrant. I remember my last day vividly. Morning light slicing through marble columns, the air heavy with omen. I walked into the Senate, surrounded by men I thought I knew. And as the knives flashed, I saw familiar faces, men I had forgiven, dined with, trusted. And then Brutus. My heart broke before my body did. Not because of betrayal, but because I understood. He believed he was saving Rome. And in that moment I realized, no one kills Caesar. Rome kills itself through Caesar. As I fell, I understood the final truth. The strategy that made me unstoppable was also my curse. To be unstoppable is to deny one's own mortality. And every man who forgets he's mortal must one day pay the price. Rome would go on. My assassins thought they killed me that day, but they only immortalized me. I ceased to be a man. I became a symbol. As long as someone in Rome dares to dream beyond the limits of power, my name will be whispered. That was my final victory, not over men, but over time itself. For though my body fell, the idea of Caesar would never die. In this powerful narrative, Julius Caesar himself recounts the journey that made him unstoppable. From his burning ambition that defied the Roman Senate to the unbreakable loyalty of his legions. He reveals how he mastered politics through manipulation, conquered minds through propaganda, and ruled the battlefield with unmatched speed. But as his power grew, so did his isolation, until the very strategy that built his empire led him to his downfall. It's the confession of a man who conquered everything except his own destiny. And now that you've seen how ambition, loyalty, and speed built and destroyed one of the most powerful men in history, I want to know what you think. If you had lived in ancient Rome, would you have stood by Caesar's side or joined those who tried to stop him? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, because your opinion brings these stories to life. If this story moved you, taught you something new, or simply made you feel the weight of history, don't leave without giving your like. It helps the channel grow and shows me that you want more epic tales like this one. And of course, subscribe and turn on the bell, because the journey doesn't end here. The next episode will take you even deeper into the hidden strategies, the betrayals, and the turning points that shaped the destiny of the Roman Empire. Stay tuned, because in this channel, history breathes, power reveals its cost, and every legend hides a human truth waiting to be uncovered. See you in the next video, where Rome rises again.